Okay, so let's start the presentation. So today's 8 teams will present. So, and actually we are gonna do the Audience Choice Award at the end of this presentation. So yeah, I'm gonna create a poll while the first team is presenting. So don't forget to vote for the Audience Choice Award. Okay, then the first team, the Adeline and Alexa.
Yep, so I guess you can share a screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop. So where's the menu?
Okay, yep.
It's okay here. Stop sharing. So yeah, it's your turn.
All right, awesome. Okay. Okay. Let me move that out of the way. Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay, here's our Qoom Discord bot. Alexa, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Hi, we are Alexandria and Adeline, and together we created a Qoom Discord bot. We were inspired to make this because making Discord bots was one of my first projects, so it holds a special place in my heart.
Okay. Yeah, so here's kind of our timeline, the way we worked. So we start off the first few weeks with our planning and making a board of our features, and then we began to work on those features. So earlier on, we moved from Qoom to GitHub and Heroku. And some of the features we began to implement throughout the weeks were public speaking, working on the bot language, the Giphy API, the timer, and then we finished off with our documentation and this presentation. Okay, so organization was very important. So we had this Google Sheet where we kept track of all our important links, as well as a timeline and kind of a log of our work, so we would stay on track. And then we also had this board. I highly recommend this website if you guys want Miro, if you guys want to plan out stuff in the future. But this was how we kind of organized our thoughts as to what we wanted the bot to do. So for instance, for the Giphy API, the bot would read the message, scan for keywords, for instance, Qoom, and then it would search for like a happy GIF and then send it back to the channel. So this was kind of how we planned our features out. Yeah.
Yeah, and just really quickly, here was our developer workflow that Mr. Lira was kind of getting into. We started with developing it collaboratively as much as we could on GitHub, and then hosting it on Heroku. And then later in the process, when you could see our scheduling, we were able to start integrating that with Qoom.
Yep. So as for our features, we're just going to go over a few: message detection, help info, Giphy API, and timer.
So with our message detection, this is one of the first ideas we had for our Discord bot, and it's basically having our bot recognize certain content from users and reacting to it with utilizing the Giphy API, which was one of our main ideas and goals for the Discord bot. For example, send positive messages for Qoom and hi hello, and then negative messages for and
And then we also have some basic info for our bot. So when you first type in Qoombot, that's going to give you an introduction and lead you to other commands. So we also, when you type in QM commands, QM is our prefix. So that's how you access other commands. You can access the social media, the Qoom environment, inspirational past projects made from Qoom, and so on.
Yeah. And so here's a little bit more about our Giphy API. We had a wonderfully hard and super fulfilling journey in trying to integrate this API into this Discord bot, and then also kind of integrating that into Qoom itself, which we will talk about later in our challenges. Mainly, it's just having our bot recognize certain commands and the content within them, and then having our bot randomly send out a GIF based on that.
Yep, and that was our primary feature, but another feature we added was a timer, because that can be pretty handy. So you summon the command with QM timer, and then you enter the specified time, like 5 seconds, 5S, and then a reason. And then after the timer has ended, it will send a reminder in the channel and in a DM. Okay, so now we'll just briefly talk about our challenges. So one challenge was scheduling. We're generally pretty busy, and there's we had to kind of set aside time to meet up, and so we actually used Discord pretty fittingly to communicate, Alexa and I. And we also had a timeline that we followed. And then for syncing code, originally we had some trouble with Qoom and the locker, but so that's in the process of being developed, but for now we went on GitHub and then deployed our code with Heroku.
Yeah, and just to briefly touch on the API travel, as Mr. Jared was talking about, this also gave us a chance, I feel, to work really closely with Qoom and kind of guinea pig test all of their new features. So we're really excited to see how that will turn out.
Yep. So overall, we had a lot of fun working on this. This was always something we looked forward to. I learned a lot personally as well from Jared and Kie, and also from Alexa, who taught me a lot. So yeah, this was pretty fun. And now we're just gonna, this is the, we can send a link later if you guys want to check out our documentation so that you can make a bot of your own. So now we're just gonna demo some of our features real quick. So another feature we didn't talk about was the delete feature. So QM delete 3, and then that'll delete that. And then we also have the timer feature. So QM timer, that's the command, and then say 3 seconds, 3S, and then reason. And then, so afterwards, after 3 seconds, it says our alarm has ended, and it also sends us a direct message here, which is pretty cool. And then finally, QM GIF. So if you want to look for a dog, ta-da! So yeah, pretty cool.
Hi, I'm Christine. Alexa is.
All right, that's all for now. We hope you enjoyed and try out our bot as well.
Yep. So
Great
thank
job.
you for, thank you for
Thank you.
presentation. And actually, if you, well, some of you already saw that their Discord bot is working on our Discord server. So if you don't see that, the bot, how bot is working, then try out. It's really fun.
Yep.
Okay. So actually, next presentation is Ality, but Ality just sent me a message. She couldn't, she couldn't make it right now. So Isabel, can you go?
Yeah, no worries. Hang on, let me share my screen. Okay, I'm gonna try and make this full screen, but please let me know if it like disappears or something. Can you still see it? Or no? Okay, thank you. So I made a habit tracker with my friend Samantha, but in these past couple of weeks, I've just been working on it by myself. I did want to make one just because I don't know too much about coding. It's mostly just HTML and CSS that I'm good at. And so this project actually introduced me to JavaScript. And so, that's been a goal of mine for a long time to get better at JavaScript. So this seemed both like a manageable project and like one that could really help me out. And so this is just an overview and like how it works. So it's a pretty simple layout. There's not too much impressive stuff with it, but basically it's built to let you track habits on a day-by-day basis. And so to begin, you just click this little blue button called Track a Habit, and then a pop-up will show up that lets you enter in the name of your habit and like how many times you're aiming to do it every day. And then you just have to create it and then watch as a card like this shows up on the screen with the name and the repetitions for it. And so there's a button at the bottom right that you can click to just increase the progress bar. And then, oh, sorry, the poll just showed up. But then as soon as you're done with everything, it'll just say, the button will go away, the progress bar will go away, and then text saying habit completed will pop up once you've successfully tracked it. And so this is the project timeline for the first week through to the third week. I was just focusing on the HTML and the CSS, and then Samantha was working on the JavaScript for the checklist. And then from week 4 to week 6, I was just working on the card JavaScript. And we did start off with a very different design for the cards, almost like a carousel. And then we changed it to the one I showed previously. Just from week 7 to week 11, this is when the card idea changed. Once we went through the interim meeting and noticed that there was a lot we could improve on. And with the current design, it was pretty tricky to do. And so there was a lot of focus on the new design. And then for week 12, it was just very minor edits. There were a couple bugs that showed up, but I was able to get those cleared out, thankfully. And then there are some highlights. The checklist is shown here. The top is once you have everything checked off, and then the bottom is just the default look. You can actually just, at the end of the day, when you're done tracking all your habits, and you can just click on, the respective day, and then it'll change to a check mark. But you can also change it back just by clicking again. Another highlight is the balance of CSS and HTML in the project. Those are the languages that I'm strongest in. And so I'm very happy with the way that I was able to kind of, use those a lot relative to the JavaScript. And then of course the functional pop-up, which I will show later. I couldn't really show it very well because it is interactive. And so, the static pictures don't really do it justice. But I was able to get the pop-up working pretty early on into the project. And so it was just mainly a matter of getting it, to fit the design of the card at the current moment. And so how I use CSS, I used transitions to make the designs a lot more, visually appealing and interactive. These are just some examples. So the bottom is it's an example of the spanner ID, which I used for the cards, just so that when you hovered over some things, then it would transition to a different color and make it look really pretty. And then on the right, you see the input for the different types. This is specifically for the pop-up. You can see how I made, background transparent, and then I just added in a couple things here. And then there's also some CSS for the card itself. So CSS is the thing that I'm probably most comfortable with. So it was great that I was able to actually use it quite a bit for this project. Because the JavaScript was kind of confusing at times. So there's significantly more of the HTML and CSS. And I'm very glad that I was able to actually balance that pretty well. So there were some challenges such as, what did we want the cards to look like? We started off with, like a kind of carousel design. And then we switched to the more, basic, easier to use designs later on. And then, how are we going to use JavaScript to make everything interactive, given the fact that we don't really know about it? So I was able to get around that just by, reading a lot and Googling a lot, and that helped quite a bit. And then, given my strengths in, CSS and HTML, should the project be very JavaScript heavy? I had to really consider that at the beginning, but then, as I planned everything out, it became clear that, I didn't have to use JavaScript for everything, and that there was a lot of power to, the HTML and the CSS that I could use. And there were quite a bit unexpected twists. So, this is how the cards look like now. So at the top, once you spawn something in, then you'll see something like this with, the button and the increments. And then as you keep pressing the button, then the progress bar will slowly go away, and then this will tick up. And then this is how it looks at the very end before you've completely deleted it. And so for the sake of convenience, we just changed the tracker cards to look like this. So we kind of went from, having people track their habits by the end of every week to tracking them by the end of every day. And then you can just start off on a clean slate the next day. And it saved quite a bit of time. So I'm glad I was able to do that. And thank you. This was pretty fun to do. It's not very impressive, but it is a lot more than I thought I could accomplish given 12 weeks. So I'll do a little demo if I can. Uh-oh, okay. So this is how it looks. Once you click this, then you'll see an option to enter habits. I can do something like sleeping. And then repetitions, you can either enter a number or use the counter here. Just kind of increment it as it goes. And then, hang on, let me move this out of the way. And then the more you press the button, then it'll just slowly go away, and then you just see the habit completed at the very end. So, and then, once you're done for the day, you just kind of check it off here. You can also uncheck it and then just, keep going as the week continues. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Oh, great job, Isabel. You really persisted through this, and you really, I think, learned a lot in the process. And I think your journey, you just described it, is very typical of, trying to learn something new. You go off in different directions and figure out what works and doesn't work. And it's always good to know when you want to pivot and go back. So
Yeah.
and also you knew when to ask for help too, Isabel. So that was really nice that you came to our creator time and asked for help when you needed it. So
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So the next team is, Evan and John.
John's just going to present it really quick.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll get started then. So for our showcase presentation, we wanted to give like a condensed version of our presentation we did a few weeks ago and didn't want to just repeat everything because most of you had just heard most of it. But to give the people who didn't get to hear that and everybody else a little bit of a refresher, we'll go through a few of the things we talked about before, starting with our project idea. And we came up with the idea to do a video game, first of all, just because Evan and I both really like video games. And we thought, since we're going to be spending a lot of time on this anyways, why not make it something we enjoy? And we knew we wouldn't be able to code like a AAA game in the time that we had. So we tried to think of a game that we'd actually be able to accomplish and get working by this end time. And we finally landed on the Atari game Space Race. And sorry, I forgot to switch the slide, but this is kind of what the Atari game looks like. And our first step was we wanted to recreate this and then kind of go from there and put our own spin on it and add some different features.
So as John mentioned, we discussed this pretty much 2 weeks ago, I believe. And so I'm just going to go over it really briefly for everyone that wasn't there. So this is the backbone function of our entire game. Everything that happens in our game happens through this function, and it happens every time a new frame is requested. So you can see we organized it into 4 main categories of clearing, logic, collisions, and drawing. So it kind of goes sequentially through all these functions to actually create the game, starting with clearing the canvas. So sorry, at the bottom, you see the window.request animation frame update function. And this basically loops itself over and over again to create the frames and make sure that the animation is all fluent and nothing's like glitching or teleporting across the screen, because that's not really ideal when you're playing a game. So every time that this frame happens, we always clear the canvas of everything that happened previously so it doesn't leave a trail or anything. And most of our logic is just moving the ship and how the ship should be moved based on what keys are being pressed, as well as moving the debris or obstacles across the screen and which direction we should move them when we should move them. Then another large part of our game was the collisions. So around week 3 or 4, I believe we had troubles with actually creating borders, as our ship could just blindly fly off of our canvas and into a game space that we can even see. So we set up borders on the bottom, left, and right-hand side that stopped the ship as soon as it got close. And then at the top, we made a warp border because the objective of the game was to get to the top to achieve points. So when it reaches the top, then it just warps the ship back down to its spawn point. Then for our debris, which are our obstacles, it's an open array that changes with the difficulty, as we're going to discuss later. So we have to constantly be checking how much debris is actually on the field, and then update and add more debris if any have gone off the field. So that's what the spawn debris does. It spawns the debris in random locations on the y-axis on either the far left of the x-axis or the far right of the x-axis. And then it kind of converges through the game. And then our check for collisions is what actually makes the game work. It's if the ship runs into any of these asteroids, it destroys the ship, resets your points to 0, and resets you back to the starting point. So that's kind of the more competitive aspects. So it's not just flying through all the debris and winning that easily. So for the drawing function, this was mostly just like drawing the ship and the debris and the score, which was pretty simple. We used the draw function within JavaScript to draw a triangle for our ship and then set the vertex as our collision point. Then for the show score, we just simply added a variable to the top right that's updated every time they reach that top warp border. And then for the draw debris, we just drew a simple circle for the start, but we're thinking of maybe changing it at some point.
Okay, so now to talk about what I think was kind of one of the more interesting parts of our process, which was the figuring out the difficulty of our game. And I thought it was about like 3 weeks ago when we started, we got like the base game down, and then we're like, okay, so now we need to add levels and that type of thing. So then we created a function so that basically as your score got higher, more asteroids would be added to the screen, and the speed of those asteroids would also be increased. And once we got that done, the game like instantly became like way more fun for me personally to play, and actually like I actually wanted to like come back and play it more and more. And it's just kind of it's like a really important thing for most of these kind of like arcade-ish games, and it was kind of a fun process going through that and learning it and just figuring out how to do that with JavaScript. So now to talk about one of the challenges we had, and it's one of the reasons, like one of the things we had to get help with, which was the collisions. And it's just kind of it looks pretty simple when you're just looking at it right now, but to actually figure out like this map here and what you had to use to get the collision to actually work. And even now, we just have it so that if the vertex collides with the asteroid, then you're reset. We haven't got the whole hitbox figured out, but it's working to some degree right now, which we're pretty happy about. And we're very excited to get done when we initially got it working. So now we wanted to talk about what we've been working on the past week. So we wanted to get the game, like now that it's actually working, we wanted to get like a start screen and make it like an actual game that you would see on the App Store. So as you can see, we have a play button, instructions button, a leaderboards, and a spot to put your name, which right now only stores that value. We don't actually use it, but we're hoping to in the future like use that for the leaderboards and have a little spot where it says score right now on the top right of the screen. Let's say like John's score is whatever, which we think is pretty cool. And we think, at least I personally think, the process of designing this start screen was pretty fun, and we got to use a whole bunch of different stuff in CSS and HTML, and it was definitely one of my more like what I thought was more fun in this process. And now I just wanted to talk about our kind of the future for the game before Evan tries to go for his high score on the game when we demo it. So basically, for any game to like be taken seriously and for people to think it has like a future, it has to have a way to make money. So the first way we thought the game could potentially make money was to kind of have like different themes for the game, which means basically you could have a Star Wars theme where the ship was like Luke Skywalker and the asteroids are like stormtroopers and you're trying to avoid them. And we think that would just be like a cool aesthetic feature for the game, as well as having an option to remove ads, which would also make money in addition to the ads themselves making money. And we think, as we've talked about with Jared a few times, the idea of potentially getting the game on mobile would be really cool. And we think that designing the controls for a mobile game, because they're so much different than the PC game, would be really fun. And would just be another cool learning experience that we could try and do sometime in the future. So now Evan's going to demo our actual game, go through the menu and try it out. And we're going to post a link to the game in the Zoom chat so you guys can check it out yourselves. And thanks to Jared for helping us out so many times and everyone else who helped us out throughout the process.
Yes, thank you. You guys were a big part in actually having this succeed. So
You're welcome. It was really fun.
yeah, I think so too.
Evan, are you okay to share your screen now?
Yes, I should be. If it
Okay,
works.
I'll post a link to the start screen in the chat.
So this is our starting screen that we created. You can enter a name, but like John said, we don't have anything to do with it as of right now. Eventually, we would like to put in the leaderboards. So our leaderboards are pretty plain. Right now, they kind of just look like this. I just put 15 blank slots pretty much. So yeah, and then you can go back to the starting screen from anything. We have our instructions, which kind of just states out the objective of the game pretty simply. And then our controls, just very simple, WASD. And then for the actual play, you can get back by scrolling down, but as you can see, it starts off at score 0, and there's only one debris going across. But as you move your ship and progressively get higher scores, now you should see multiple debris. And then if you keep on going, then even more debris will show up. And then eventually when you reach certain increments, such as when you reach the score of 10, 20, and 30, the speed of the debris will increase, which makes it drastically harder to actually progress any further. Although the scaling of the debris per score actually goes down slightly to kind of compensate for the increase in difficulty to make it so it is still possible. So our game difficulty currently capped itself out at level 40 or a score of 40. I don't think anyone that I've shared the game with has gotten to even 30 as of yet. So it'd be interesting to see if any of you could get there. I think my record's like 27. It gets pretty hard to get any further than that. So yeah, that's pretty much all for our presentation.
That's awesome. Did you guys ever think of doing itch.io?
No, I don't know what that is.
My daughter was telling me about it, and it's another way to monetize games, she was saying. Something to look at. And I just want to say also, if you're interested in game developing, what you guys have done is build a game just in vanilla JavaScript in a raw language. And it's a great way to learn how to build games without a framework, so that when you do a framework like Unity or something else, that framework will actually make a lot more sense. So this is really a wonderful exercise for you guys to do to help you become really good game developers.
I have heard of itch.io. I was just going to say, I think it's a cool business model or choice for your game. Instead of having to do ads, you can just, personally, if I were to be a game developer and develop a game, I'd rather do it through this way than to have ads, because I just kind of find that annoying and takes some of the fun out of it than playing. And this is just a cool way of sharing and distributing small indie games.
Yeah, experiment with it. And then also, if you guys come back in the spring or in the summer, we can work on the back end to do a lot of the other things that you wanted it to do. So, okay.
Right. So, Joe, who's playing this game, or who is playing now? So, yeah, what score did you get? Well, my highest is 6. Oh, 21. Wow, Isabel. So, right. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for thank you, Evan and John, for presentation. Yeah, the game is pretty cool, and yeah, I just kind of keep playing. So the next team is Amy and Carissa. So are you ready? Yep.
Can you see my screen? So hi everyone, welcome to our presentation on the Qoom appointment scheduler. My name is Carissa.
And I'm Amy.
Okay, so first we'll just go over an overview of our project. and then show a little bit of our code and end with some key takeaways.
So our project was an appointment scheduling web application built on Qoom. So we wanted to create this tool to provide an easy way for Qoom users to design personal meetings, office hours, or other events, and invite guests to sign up at convenient times. So personally, we use tools like Calendly a lot, and it's even used by the creator group. So we thought it would be really cool to build our own version of it. And so the tool is divided into two parts by the two parties involved, the schedulers and the attendees.
So here's just a quick rundown of how the application works. So it starts with the event scheduler. So they create a new event by entering the event name, location, description, and meeting link. Then the scheduler will choose their availability. So they'll enter the date that they want and the time ranges, as well as indicate that their time zone. And there's also buttons for them to add more times or add another date. And once they click create event, they'll be shown a summary of all of the details and also a link that they can share with the guests.
So when the attendee visits the link sent by the scheduler, they'll see this page on the left, and they can then choose the time frame they want and then enter their name, email, and any details for the meeting. And once they click confirm, a thank you page will pop up and an email with all the meeting information will be sent. So next we'll be showing and explaining parts of our code. The first is HTML content division using the div element to code the layout of the scheduler availability page. So the div original section, which is yellow, is the biggest section and serves as a container for the other elements inside. And we also have the div section choose time, which is within the div original section. And within this, we have the inputs start time and end time. And underneath choose time, there's another div element, new element ID time, which is for newly created times for the same date. And this is also within the element original section. And so we wanted to keep our code organized while there were many elements. So using these div elements helped us arrange our sections in order.
This next section explains how we use index numbers in order to make sure that the start and end times were stayed as a pair, and also that all the times within a date that are underneath the date are matched with that date. So just to make sure that everything stays in the same order again. So this was done by changing the names of the inputs so that they had specific date or time indexes. So it looks a little bit confusing on the screen, but so for example, the date names, they end with the date index. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, and so on as you add more dates. And then for the start and end times, they actually have two numbers. So the first one is the time index. So that makes sure that the start and end time match together. So they'll always have the same number. And then the second number is the date index. So that will always match with the date. So for example, the first section will be 0, and then the second section is 1. This next section is just some JavaScript code of how we did the add more times button. So basically when the button is clicked, the add more times, it will call a function called add time, and that will duplicate the original row of the two inputs, and it will append or add onto underneath, and it will also create a trash can button so that you can delete the entire row if you want. And then it also updates the names so that it has the appropriate index numbers.
And in this project, we also had to utilize an API to allow the scheduler to access data and send information to and from the database. So this slide shows the getting of information from the first page to store in the database. And we also wanted to send information from each page to the next, so the information would be displayed. Like the event name and location was displayed on the scheduler availability page. So whenever you see the double brackets, it's calling for the information with the ID from the previous page and will be displayed on the current page. And we also use a schema to store all the values inputted by the user in a database.
And lastly, key takeaways. So what did we learn? So throughout the entire cohort, a key lesson I learned was the importance of having consistent meetups. So a lot of the times I was busy with schoolwork and I thought that I didn't have time to work on the project, but just by dedicating 1 or 2 hours to each week with Amy, we were able to make sure we stay on track with our projects. And another one is office hours. So in the first few weeks of our project, we didn't go to office hours, and that caused a lot of issues to just pile up really quickly, especially with the back end because we don't really have any experience with it. So once we got help from Jared and Kie, it was a lot easier to continue and to stay motivated. For me, overall, this project has helped me develop my coding skills in a lot of ways. Going in, I only had really basic knowledge of like just HTML and CSS and barely anything of JavaScript. But this project allowed me to really delve into those languages and also experience backend. So we use Express.js and also schemas, APIs, stuff like that.
And as I wasn't familiar with JavaScript before starting this project, like utilizing online resources like YouTube or Stack Overflow to see sample solutions to similar problems was super helpful to me throughout the process to learn. And we also went to office hours almost weekly, like towards the end of the project, to learn from Jared and Kie, which helped us a lot along the way. And yeah, like Kirsa, I've never really had this opportunity to like use back-end side or use APIs, so it was really fun to learn. And thank you for listening, and please check out the link below to schedule and share your own events. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you gonna give us a demo or?
Sure. Give me 1 second. Or Amy, do you want it? Okay. Okay. So this is the first page. You just enter, and this is like the time you want for the duration of the meeting. So this will show all the information you just inputted, and then you can choose. I'll just put in some random times. And then you can also add or remove. And then that will update the information. And this is the list, or this is the link that you can share. And this has a unique code or ID so that each event will have a different link that you can share. And just choose a random time. And this is updated in your local time. Okay, let's see if I get the let me just. Yep, so the email just displays all the information. And yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you. We're almost like 80% there, right? Replacing Calendly.
Yeah. Yeah,
This is really cool.
Yeah, so yeah, I plan to use the Carissa and Amy's scheduler instead of Calendly for the spring cohort. So if you find any bug, then just just email
You know who to
them,
talk
not
to.
us. So yeah, it's all their responsibility, I think. Okay, yeah,
This is
so
great.
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Amy and Carissa. Yeah. So actually, like those two span 2 cohort to complete this whole project because this application size is pretty big. So they finished the all front end work on first cohort, and then second cohort they spend more time on developing the backend side. So yeah, if you think about the project, you can actually plan like that so that you can kind of spend 2 cohort to complete whole project. Okay, so the next team is Kim and Lian. Kim, Lian, are you there?
Yes, I am. So I'm gonna share my screen. Sorry for that. Okay, hi. So our project is an accomplishment system, as you saw during the 8 weeks we talked about it. So sorry, does it? Okay, yeah. So the purpose of our project was to encourage users to use Qoom every day. So by creating an incentive platform, we want it with with a robot, and like we can change it depending on the time we spend on Qoom. So it's more creative, it's more fun. You want to unlock new items to customize your own little robot. It will show you a little bit later. So that's very nice. So make coding more fun also. That was our idea behind the project. What we learned, Kim, I'm gonna let you talk about your things first. Can we hear Kim?
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so basically we never used JavaScript or an API, so there was that to learn. So I don't know if I can show my screen.
Yep, I'm gonna stop showing it first.
So basically we had to learn how to use the API to fetch data, and so the user can save his robot. So that was the big challenge. So Jared really helped us during the office hour to understand how the MongoDB worked, which is like a database. So that was the big challenge. And we also never used JavaScript. So we had to create like the button dynamically because we didn't want to input those individually. So we had to learn how to make buttons in JavaScript instead of HTML. So it was a really big challenge, but it was a great way to learn. So basically what we did is create a button, and we had a function with a lot of parameters, taking like the HTML, the image, and the time needed on Qoom to enable the button. And we treated that info in the function to create the button that we called all the way here. So that's why we did a function, because we didn't want to enter this like I think like 50 times. So yes, I'll pass it to you, Liam.
Yes, thank you. So also another big part of our project was designing the Qoom robot. So it was definitely a challenge in the design, and so it was a time for us to get creative and invent some very fun things. We used a program called Adobe Illustrator to do so. So for those of you who are not familiar with the program, I'm going to show you how we created it and also how it works on our page. So that is the Adobe Illustrator interface. So how it works on our web page, it's that all the images are saved up, and when you click on different button, you can change the info. So we needed to create a different image for all of the options we add. So for example, here you can add a different hats. So for example, you can add this ad there. So we created different hats it was all part in Adobe. So you can change it there. It's like different layers. So, and you can show a layer, but not the other one. So that's how you change the ads. So for example, you have this one, and you can also change the ends. So that's how we created all of our images. So and then we imported it on Qoom, and using the JavaScript and the API fetch, you can change the images on the website. So now Kim will do a little demonstration of our project.
Yes, we had a little last minute problem. The JavaScript on the back end didn't seem to work like today, and it worked yesterday and all the days before.
Oh,
So
no.
like 5 minutes before the presentation, I created like an entire the project entirely working on the front end, so we can
Okay.
show what it did.
All
So
right. My
like
apologies,
we
Kim.
have,
That's okay.
yeah, we don't understand either why it's not working.
Oh, we'll
So we
look
have
at
the
it.
streaks of the user this week, and we have like the total numbers of days he was connected this year. And basically, it enabled or disables buttons, so the user can choose like how to dress his little robot. Like, and we also have like badges that the users collect by completing some tasks. And that's basically what we did, and it was just like a fun way to learn all those notions. So that's it.
Great. You guys did a really beautiful job, Kim and Leanna. The UX is just really impressive, and the back end and the coding. I mean, you guys should be really proud of yourselves. And just like what we do with Alexis project, I want to get your projects into the actual Qoom product. So I'll be working with Guille, and hopefully I'll ping you guys in the future, if you don't mind, to make sure we integrate it correctly. Because it's a really, I think it's gonna be a really powerful start to that, getting people motivated to come to Qoom every day, as you described at the beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah, so actually the result is way way more than I expected. So yeah, we cannot actually, yeah, we should use that, your outcomes on our product, so that everyone can kind of have fun with your kind of robots. Okay, so the next presenter is Connor. Yeah.
Hello, is my mic working okay?
It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
You hear a little bit of the background, but we can hear you.
Oh, well, I don't know what that'd be from, but okay. So it turns out that Google locked me out because someone tried to log in my account from Russia. So we're going to go unscripted right now. And I'm just going to walk you through a bit of my process for creating my project. So let me share my screen. So this is some of the backend code that I'm using at the moment. For those of you who don't know, I am Connor, and I made a video editor for my project. And this idea sort of came about one day whenever Kay and Jared asked me to come up with my project. And I was getting really frustrated on another thing I was trying to do because I couldn't trim this simple video, and that's all I wanted to do. But you have to download this huge software just to be able to do something simple like that. And another thing that tipped me off was if you go to Qoom and you click this, with all the other elements, it opens the file, but it can't open the MP4 unless you view it. So I wanted a little editor, just like every other file has, to be able to edit those things. So I did my video editor, and you can see here that it doesn't look all that impressive visually, but there is a lot of technical stuff that went into it. So the first thing I did, as all great programmers do, is I looked up how to do it. And I ran into this 30-minute long lecture about a lady who tried to do something similar, and she was clearly a pro in the field, and she could not do it. And so that was kind of my first challenge or demotivator, but I kept on going. So the first thing I wanted to do was have this little display here that shows you a preview of your file. So to do that, I needed a file input and something that would change that video every time. So if we go back in the code here, we can see that we have this function called display video, which gets the file input in the video element and creates a temporary URL to store that video object, and then loads the video and automatically plays it. So that was the first thing done, which in and of itself took a bit of time. But after that, I still needed to get the main logic for actually trimming the video. The only problem is I was researching softwares to do so, and the only one, the most popular one, you probably use it without even realizing it's an OBS Blender. It's called FFmpeg, but it's a command line tool. It's not meant to be used in the browser. But lucky for me, I found a WebAssembly version of it, and WebAssembly is essentially C in the browser. So I was able to take a version of FFmpeg and port it to the browser. There were some problems with it, so I'm actually running a modified version, but it does work. So right here we have validation, so you can't just put in something random and completely break it, because that wouldn't be any fun. So after it makes sure that you're not trying to do anything dumb, it loads the data and determines what you want to do, and will write the file into a format it can read, and then actually do the conversion on it. So to see this in action, I'm going to go back to the streamer, and I'm just going to do the default video. So it's just going to be this logo. Let's set it from second 1 to second 3. It's currently a 5-second long video. And let's make it a MOV. And if we press trim, what it should do is have a progress bar. And once it loads, which can take a second because my computer is unbearably slow, it takes this. So we can see that it's a 2-second long video that you can preview. And if you press these 3 dots here, you can download it. Currently, this only works in Chrome because of the script dependencies, which I want to change at some point. And I saw those dependencies, and I wanted to port it to backend because Node.js has a FFmpeg module. So I had never worked with any sort of backend before, so it was completely new to me. So special thanks to Jared for helping me out. He's probably sick of all my questions and everything. So I learned how REST APIs work and all of that, and how to make requests to them, and it took a lot of time. I spent way too long on it. But we did manage to get a backend version of this working. So the problem with that is that it puts a lot of strain on the Qoom servers because videos and editing takes a lot. So a future thing I would want to do is put this on something else so it can be remote and still usable. But yeah, that's essentially all that I did. You'll notice here that you can set your file format so you can actually compress it, which is one of the most useful features, I think. So the next steps for this would be to, again, port it over to a different server and eventually make it nice enough to where it could be used in that initial context of viewing and editing your MP4. So yeah, this was really technically challenging, but I managed to pull through and at least get some sort of working demo version going. So I hope you enjoy it and are able to use it. And I can put the link down below if you want to trim a couple seconds off of the video or something. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. I just want to say also, Connor, another great use case for your thing is, for your video editor, is to convert video types. Often a lot of people use iMovie and it's .movie.mov, and that has 2 problems. One, they're really big. And number 2, they don't work natively on the web. So you can use Connor's tool to actually shrink the file size substantially to MP4, and it will work in the web on any browser. So I've used your tool a couple times for that.
Yeah, one of the biggest priorities was optimization, so it's as efficient with the data as you can get. So this is one of the best conversions you'll be able to get on a video, which I think is a great feature to have.
Cool.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So actually, well, I'm going to use Connor's video editor for this video editing. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of modify this video and then share it and using your video editor. Yeah, I think that this is the most kind of compact application I've ever saw for video editing. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, so next team is Edwin and Yuan.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Can you see it okay? All right. So hi everyone, my name is Yuni Nguyen
and I'm Adwaith Rayharan.
And over the past 3 months, we have been working on CryptoCode, which is a website for some of your cryptography needs. And so for our idea, CryptoCode initially started off as just an encryption and decryption tool where users can put in a message, either plain text or ciphertext, and our website would generate their new message. And this was inspired by other websites that do a similar thing where they have ciphers in one place for you to put your messages. And the idea itself came from doing capture the flag events and any other related competitions because they oftentimes had like a cryptography section where you would need to decode or encode a message.
So what it became. So we continued with implementing these tools for the ciphers, but it also became an educational resource for users as well. We have ciphers that are available to for the messages, and we also wanted to have a place where users could, learn more about the ciphers that they're using. They also have the opportunity to learn some facts about the origin, history, and evolution of the cryptography itself. So moving on, how did we make it? So as for making the website itself, we had a lot of we made a to-do list and task manager so that we could keep track of our progress and what we needed done. We also use this to put all the resources we need to help us with the programming. And for the programming itself, we used HTML and CSS as well as JavaScript. A lot of it was, Googling, especially with the HTML and CSS, because we weren't really proficient on it. And for the next couple of slides, we'll show you snippets of our 3 web pages. And I'm also going to cover these in a demo in a little while as well. So on our homepage, we basically have our title and navigation. And when you click the Explore, it takes you to the bottom of the page where you learn about our other 2 pages. Again, I'm going to show you this. So now for the Edgar page, on our Edgar page, we have the different ciphers that are included in our website. And there are different avatars that you can click on to see more information about. And also on this page is our timeline, which gives you a brief history of cryptography. And finally, our widget page. This is where you're able to put in your message and encrypt it. Right now we have 3 ciphers, which is the A1Z26, @bash, and Caesar cipher. We were planning on adding more possibly whenever we have the time.
So for making the website, we learned about the different encryption algorithms they use and how to implement them in code. And it was pretty interesting to us because the way that we think about how a cipher works is different from how a computer does it, because computers use these algorithms and they work with our messages mathematically. And we also learned more about HTML and CSS as well as JavaScript. For example, we learned how to use the CSS animation, and we also learned a little bit about what jQuery is for JavaScript. And obviously we learned how to use Qoom. What's really nice about being part of the creator group is that it kind of incentivizes you to make sure you're staying on progress. And also we have Kay and Jared to help us out whenever we need it, as well as the other creators. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
And we also would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to Kie and Jared. Our project wouldn't have worked without all of your guidance and support. And now we will move on to the demo. Okay. Are you guys able to see our my screen? All right, so this is basically our homepage of our CryptoCode website. So I'm gonna click Explore here, and this basically takes you to the widget page and the Edgar page. So the widget, so over here, it just gives you a little bit of a description as to what each page is about. So first, I'm gonna show the widget page. So the widget page basically has each of the ciphers that we have here, and I'm gonna click on the A1Z26, for example. So I'm gonna type a message here. I like dogs, and basically it decrypts the message, and this is the result that you get. And this is the same thing that we have for each of our other ciphers as well. And now moving on to the Educrypt page, this is basically where we have each of our ciphers, our little, cartoon characters here. And I'm gonna click on the Caesar cipher again, for example, and it kind of gives you a little bit about the history of it, as well as how it really works. And of course, we have our timeline here, which talks about, the history of cryptography. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
All right, that's a really cool project, Adwith and Uni. It's do you have it on Qoom? Do you have a link for people to play with and look at yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're gonna add more to it before we put on Qoom.
Before you publish it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you need more extra help on it, or you guys are good with it?
Maybe we'll see, because it's mainly the design of it that we need to do.
Okay. Well, just let me know, or let Kie know. We're willing to help you to see it through. But yeah, good job. This is going to be a really cool project to put on your, I think, on your resume to, to universities and things, to show that what you've done with coding. So I think it's cool. And teachers could use it at your school potentially too. All right.
Yeah. And also the website, overall website quality is pretty good. So you have a really good design skills.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. The design is really nice.
Yeah. Right. Then the last presenter is Ality. Are you ready?
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for not being able to go earlier, but I'm gonna share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, cool. So yeah, sorry, hold on. Okay, yeah. So I created a time management tool during the spring cohort. Yeah. So basically, I'm in this presentation, I'll just go over what it is, its features, how I made it, and then some challenges I ran into. So the purpose of the tool, so due to transition to online learning, as I assume mostly everyone is on right now because of COVID, I know a lot of students who have been struggling a lot with time management and being able to get just homework assignments done. At least that's how it's been for me. And sometimes having so many things to do can be so overwhelming. And I personally switch back and forth between a lot of things. So I never get one thing done, which is a problem. So I decided to build a tool for myself and other people who are going through the same thing, so that it can alleviate some of that stress, and it can allow the user to focus on things one at a time, if that makes sense. So it's pretty self-explanatory. The user enters a task name and the amount of time you want to spend on it. It's just like a regular to-do list app, but it has a timer built into it. So you can estimate the amount of time you want to spend on the task, and it'll store that. And then once you click start, it'll start the timer, and yeah, and you can pause it, restart it. It does temporarily disable the other tasks. One, so that it doesn't mess with the timer, and two, so that the user can focus on one task at a time, like I said. But of course, you can check it off or delete it or restart it, and that'll allow you to start the other task. So yeah. So some of the features in depth, just the instruction modal, it's included in there for the users who need it. It has a timer. I did struggle with this a little bit, which I'll elaborate more on later. It does also include audio, both for a warning, for when your time is running out, if you choose to check that you want the warning. Yeah, and then the task list. And as you can see, node 17 is the one that's actually going on, that's the one that the timer is running, and the other ones are disabled, so you can only delete them. You can't try to start another task while you're doing that one. Yeah, and I can also demonstrate that right now through, yeah. Oh, by the way, it also has color themes. I did figure out the color themes using CSS variables. I will add more, but yeah, that's what I have so far. Here, I can do a test drive. So because none of the tasks have started, you can add one and it'll start. And then once you start it, all the other ones will be disabled. So you can't click on them unless you restart your current one, and then you can click on it, or if you check it off, you can start them. So yeah, I'll keep it running while I continue present. And then when you hear the timer, that's because, yeah, and you click give me a warning and it'll warn you. Yeah. So I made it with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I had a pretty good knowledge of HTML and CSS before going into the spring cohort. I did struggle a lot with JavaScript, but this project allowed me to gain like a really good foundation of all the basics, which is like what I personally need to move forward with like more complex frameworks. So I was able to practice arrays, loops, functions, and HTML DOM, which I wasn't familiar with before, but I needed to use to like create new elements and manipulate the ones that were already on the front end. Yeah, for CSS, I use Flexbox to style it, and CSS variables to switch through the color themes, which I can show here. This is the one. These are the CSS variables I used. It was pretty simple. All you really had to do was switch back and forth between the classes of the HTML tag, and it worked. A lot of tutorials were overcomplicating it, so I couldn't figure it out at first, but I accidentally figured it out by using the classes, and it worked. And this is the timer function for, or this is the function for the timer. It's basically just conditionals. A lot of the problem that I ran into with the timer was implementing it with the task, because I did it on a separate HTML file and then combining it with the to-do list app. Oh, that's the warning. That's the 30-second warning. Yeah, and implementing it was kind of a struggle because it kept messing up, and there was a lot of scenarios I would encounter in which the timer would like restart an interval or like speed up. It was a whole mess, but I did end up figuring it out. Yeah, so I already talked a little bit about my challenges. I did struggle with UI at first. I redid it a couple of times on Figma before I came up with it. Right on time. Okay, there you go. That's the audio for anyone who wanted to hear. And you could click pause, restart, check, or the trash. Everything will stop the timer. But yeah, that's basically how it works. Going back to the challenges. Something else, yeah, like I said, it came up with a lot of errors. So I would run into problems where if I restarted, like if I clicked this one on another element, it would restart the buttons for all of the elements. And then if a user were to like accidentally click another one, it would speed up the clock or it would mess up the interval. So it was a whole problem, but that's why I came up with the disabled things, and it did correspond with like the one at a time purpose that I wanted to implement into it. So it worked okay. Yeah, and for what's to come, I do want to add maybe like an editing feature for each task so that a user doesn't have to like delete their task and create a new one. So maybe an edit one would be cool. And some sort of like record system to see if tasks that haven't been completed can carry over to like a different session, or like when a user opens a new window or whatnot. More color themes, of course. I want to add like a whole section of colors for the user to switch back and forth between. Yeah, and be more collaborative, because during this cohort, I wasn't able to collaborate with my peers as much. I did get a couple ideas from my peers. Isabel gave me the idea for color themes. Thank you, Isabel. But I do want to collaborate more during spring. Yeah, because that's what code is, right? Collaborative code. And yeah, and I do hope this tool can help be helpful with anyone who struggles with time management like me. And I'll send the link to the Zoom chat right now. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ality. That it's an awesome tool. I want to use it, and I think what you've done and you proved is that it's fun to solve your own problems with coding when you're learning how to code. So I think this is a great example of that. Instead of waiting for people to give you a problem or something, just solve your own problems, and then you take your own little baby that you can grow and grow and grow, so into whatever you want. So we're looking forward to the next session to see how we can do some of those things, and maybe at least we can start doing some of the back end stuff as well, like some of the other students done, so that we can you can make it more collaborative and make it make the data persist onto different systems and things.